Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And welcome to this week's Thoughtful Thursday. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube at Hacking Your Leadership and leave us a review on iTunes. On this Thoughtful Thursday, I want to talk about a LinkedIn article I saw that references the term quick quitting, and it's less about the name and more about what's actually happening. And that's that people are leaving jobs much more quickly than in the past. So quick quitting just refers to the number of jobs where people are leaving in less than a year. And that is up substantially year over year. It peaked earlier this year, but it's showing that people are having really no problems leaving a job quickly instead of kind of sticking it out. You know, it used to be that if something were to rub you the wrong way at the job or it wasn't what you thought it was going to be, you would at least kind of hang out a little bit just to make sure that it wasn't a pattern. You'd make sure that, you know, that it was actually the right move to leave. And it seems like now a lot of people are like, nope. The straw that broke the camel's back happens on day 4 now, as opposed to on day 400. Have you seen this trend? Have you seen people apply for jobs, get hired, and then like 6 months later or 3 months later they're like, I'm out, never mind?
I still see it as rare. I don't see it a lot all the time. I see a little bit more of the ghosting element of accepting jobs maybe and then like not showing up, things like that.
Yep.
I'm a little bit more, but and I know like these are the types of things that there'll be tons of articles and ways of talking about like how do you stop this from happening, and like and I agree that like there's it shares that there's probably something wrong in either the selection process or the onboarding process, quite honestly, like for somebody to make a decision that quickly. However, I'm kind of also on the side of things of like, if it doesn't feel right, or if it's not something that maybe you thought what it was, like to kind of bow out quickly, I kind of also like that idea, to be quite honest with you, because I think that sometimes staying and maintaining and just trying to make it work is not only tough for the business, the leaders, but also the individual person. And we talk a lot about that, of like you kind of got to feel and vibe and get an understanding of what's going on to make the best decision for yourself.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of the ghosting that takes place during the onboarding process is because people are applying for multiple jobs. And if your number one choice is dragging their feet a little bit and your number 3 choice is more quick to the table, then it could be real easy for a person to say, you know what, I'm jumping at this because what if my number 1 choice doesn't come through? I want to be able to land somewhere. And so you accept the job. And then a week later, your number 1 choice comes in and says, hey, let's talk more. And then people are, it used to be that you would say to your number 1 choice, I've already taken a job somewhere else. Yeah, I'm sorry. Now it's, oh yeah, let's talk. And I'll just not show up to work. Like whatever, if I get this job, I'll just not show up. That is definitely a newer thing. When it comes to quick quitting though, this is assuming that a person is in their job long enough to where their number 1 choice, if they were going to reach out, is not going to anymore. Like we're past that. We're past the kind of, the interviewing and job selection process. And now you're actually in the job. And my knee jerk is to say that, if something happened to you during the interview process that you didn't like, then you move on. And if you find yourself wanting to leave a job that quickly, it means either A, the company lied to you like flat out, like they put their best marketing foot forward when it came to getting you to get the job, and they did not paint an accurate picture of what life was going to be like. And if that's the case, then shame on that company. Like your job is to paint an accurate picture of what the life is going to be like for an applicant. So I don't imagine that happening often enough to where it drives this spike. Those could be one-offs. It just seems like people are at the point where they're like, you know what? The consequences of quitting are low enough where I'm looking for perfection here, or at least really close to it. And if I start to see anything less than that, I'm out. I'll just find something else, because it is so important to me to love what I do and to love the people I work alongside and to love the experience I'm having, that anything short of that, it can't just be, yeah, this is fine. Like, this is fine isn't good enough anymore because there's no consequences to leaving. So now I can really just kind of search all around even while I'm still working. The reason why I want to talk about this though is that from a leadership standpoint, what I've seen is that a lot of leaders have started treating new applicants in a way that says, I assume this person is going to leave quickly, so I'm not putting the time and effort in. And that's where I see this as a problem from a leadership standpoint. And so what I want to ask you, Lorenzo, is have you seen any differences amongst leaders in terms of how they treat new employees compared to how they would 2 or 3 years ago from a standpoint of, maybe we're gonna wait before we start the development or the career conversations or the time and effort that I can put into you as a leader, because I want to see if you're going to stick it out first, maybe for a year or two before we get into that. But first, I want to give up word from one of our sponsors. All right, Lorenzo, have you seen this change out of leaders anywhere where you just want to say, why are you kind of putting this wall up or being standoffish as opposed to just diving straight in and trying to lead people?
It's interesting. I've had a couple of conversations with leaders that I know that are really close to me, that I work with consistently, and also leaders from other industries. And two things have kind of boiled to the top recently that I've not heard for a long time. The first thing is a lot of conversation around like the first 90 days and like this idea of kind of like a, like a tryout period type of thing,
Sure.
which I think leads to some of that of like, the hiring decisions. Is it a good fit? Are they showing behaviors that people want to see, that type of thing? And I think the second thing that I've been hearing a lot about is that idea that I think comes from, like the cost of turnover. A lot of companies look at that number. A lot of companies share that. And for every new hire, it costs your company X amount of dollars for training and for this and for all of that.
Yep.
And then so your point to your question, like how do we keep people long enough where we're not hemorrhaging money from a cost of turnover, especially in the first year where it's typically a lot more of a higher investment when it comes to the training that people get, the benefit packages, things like that end up happening. And so there's been a lot of that kind of being socialized around different circles, which I think speaks to your point of companies saying, well, if we're seeing more of this trend where people are quitting quicker, then do we make an adjustment to the strategy and when and where and how we invest the money in training / development / onboarding, versus maybe delay it a little bit. And then for those that kind of stick it out, then we invest there. I think if you're doing that or you're talking about those things, you're really playing with fire. Because like what you had mentioned earlier is like that initial onboarding, that initial peek into the culture, that initial like, how do these leaders care for me? Through what lengths are they there to support me and to develop me and train me, and the confidence and the trust that you build at the beginning. If those things are not reflective of your values of your leaders or of your organization, then what are they reflecting? If you're not doing those types of things. And so I think that it's one of those situations where, I think leaders and organizations should absolutely stick to their brand and stick to their values and invest the time and money and resources into making sure that every person coming into the door has a great opportunity to see what the best of this organization has to offer. And if that's not good enough or that's different than what they want, then okay. Then that's going to happen. What can cause a real issue is that you start to see turnover and people leaving that would have stayed had they been provided with the normal element of onboarding and investment and development. And now you're risking losing really, really good talent because you think that you're building a strategy, to kind of the lowest common denominator, which is rarely ever successful.
Right. In the wake of COVID, from a schooling standpoint, there are a lot of schools, a lot of kids who are behind in terms of just their math and reading, and a year to a year and a half of homeschooling in environments that may not be conducive to learning can do that to large groups of people. And in a lot of areas, I've read some stories that in a lot of areas, what a lot of the testing, the mandatory or like kind of generalized state level testing that's going on, they're lowering the standards of like what is like a great score versus a good score. And my first thought was, okay, so obviously clearly these test scores are important to you. You can increase them one of two ways. You can teach the kids more, or you can lower the standards for what it means to be a good score. And either way, you'll get your result. One is clearly easier than the other. This is the exact same thing. You can there are two ways to lower the cost of turnover. You can lower turnover, or you can lower the cost of hiring, which is also lowering the cost of turnover. And you're spot on. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You treat employees like they're short term, they're going to be short term. Mm-hmm. You treat employees like they're long term. Some of them are still going to be short term, but some of them are going to be long-term. And the ones that are long-term or the ones that are sticking it out are the ones where that investment really is needed. And you know what? If you invest something in somebody that ends up being a short-term employee, honestly, so what? As a leader, and this is regardless of what your company says is the appropriate thing to do, where the rubber meets the road here is you as an individual leader need to be honing these skills of leadership. You need to be treating people like they're all long-term employees, because at the very least, you're doing the act of leadership yourself and getting better at it. And if you start treating people like they're short-term employees for that first 90 days, for that first 6 months or whatever it is, you will eventually lose the ability to treat people like they're long-term employees. It's a skill that needs to be constantly practiced. And if you fall into the trap of telling yourself that, oh, I don't need to do this for this group of employees, if this group of employees is a large enough group, then you don't have that practice every day doing this enough. And so, yeah, I think a lot of leaders can see numbers like this and think, okay, this makes my job easier. I'm just going to be, very kind of 1 + 1 = 2. Here's the training guide. Now I'm going to sit back and watch what you do for the next 90 days and just see if you're worth my time and effort and energy. Don't look at these numbers like that. Look at these numbers as, oh, you know what? I'm going to stop this. I'm going to stop this trend from happening by showing these people what it means to have a company and a leader care about you and put the time and effort into developing you and helping you accomplish your goals. And lo and behold, my company is going to buck the trend and not have the high level of turnover during that first year, as opposed to just assuming it's going to happen. It's inevitable. And so let's just cut our losses and move on.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And have a great day.